Hey everyone, welcome back. Hope you're having a fantastic day so far. So this year in 2023, we have a $154 billion problem. As far as Social Security goes, we're going to be going over what that problem is, why we maybe shouldn't be overly concerned, at least right now, but just a little bit wary, and perhaps what the best solution to this problem is. But before we go ahead and dive into the main content of today's video, if you wouldn't mind helping me out real quickly by just giving this video a like, that just helps out with the good old YouTube algorithm, and also consider subscribing to my channel if you have not already. Okay, so according to the New York Post, Biden's Department of Education canceled another $39 billion in student loans, and you know, in the past several months alone, Biden has now canceled around $116 billion in student loan debt, which, that's great for them. Anyone who has student loan debt, that's another debt that they have to pay off each and every month, which really crunches their lifestyle. So, it's good for them if they have, a little bit less stress and less things to pay off. But you might be wondering what exactly this has to do with Social Security beneficiaries. Well, Rick Scott actually tweeted out something that he actually made a pretty good point here, that the U.S. Congressional Budget Office just told us in a budget committee hearing that it would take $154 billion to shore up Social Security this year. Instead of doing that, Joe Biden has spent $116 billion on student loan forgiveness. Again and again, he puts liberal elites before hardworking families and seniors. So again, there we have those two numbers towards, student loan debt. We're putting $116 billion towards that, but yet the Social Security Trust Fund, we are paying out more benefits than what's coming in. But people in Washington don't really seem to care the same amount about people receiving Social Security. We're not seeing any help going towards those people receiving Social Security, even though this is a fixed income with inflation running rampant. But it seems like the people in Washington really seem to care a lot more about other people than those receiving Social Security. And although it's not a real issue right now in 2023, in 2033 it very well could be, because that is when the trust fund is going to be going insolvent. And at that point, we're going to have to cut benefits by 20 to 25% to continue to pay them out for everybody. And that would be completely unacceptable if we get to that point, if we allow for us to get to that point and have to cut benefits for everyone. And while 10 years may seem like a long way away, it's really going to be here before we know it. It just seems like years go by faster and faster as times go on. So we can see here from the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget that the CBO projects that Social Security will run chronic deficits over both the short and long term. It will run a cash flow deficit of $154 billion in 2023, which is 1.6% of taxable payroll, or 0.6% of gross domestic product. Over the next subsequent decade, Social Security will run $3.5 trillion of cumulative cash flow deficits. Over the long term, CBO projects Social Security's cash shortfall will grow to 3.9% of taxable payroll by 2033, to 5.1% of payroll by 2050, to 6.8% of payroll by 2075, and to 7.4% of payroll by 2097. So obviously this is a big problem. They also mentioned here that the Congressional Budget Office recently published detailed long-term projections for Social Security that will project the financial outlook for the program over the next 75 years. Under CBO's projections, the Social Security Old Age and Survivors Insurance Trust Fund will exhaust its reserves by fiscal year 2032. So obviously, once again, this is a huge issue, and we can see a chart up on the screen here. And what we're looking at, we see, 4 different lines, and we have 2 different orange lines. The orange lines are what we are spending on Social Security. So these are basically the benefits going out to everyone. Each time you get a check, this is what we are spending on Social Security. And we can see at some point between 2007 and 2017 that orange line actually surpassed the blue line. It went higher than the blue line. Now what the blue line is the Social Security revenue. The revenues are the money coming into the trust fund. This is the money that when workers are paying out of their paychecks, the 6.2 to 12.4% from the Social Security payroll tax. This is what the revenue is for the Social Security Trust Fund. And of course, each check that you're getting, some people are paying taxes on that. So these are the taxes that is getting pulled back into the trust fund to later pay out. So again, at one point, the blue line was higher than the orange line. So at one point, we were taking in more money than what we were paying out. But somewhere between 2007 and 2017, we ended up paying out more in Social Security than what we were taking in. And then we can see a red line here. The two red lines are basically the projections at which point we will no longer be able to pay out benefits. So that's somewhere between 2027 and 2037. So some projections have us around 2032, some projections have us around 2033. So at some point in the next decade, unfortunately, there are going to be cuts of 20 to 25% if nothing is done about this problem. So they go on to say that as Social Security's trust funds rapidly approach insolvency, the necessary adjustments to restore solvency will become harder and the burden on beneficiaries more pronounced the longer policymakers wait to act. Enacting trust fund solutions sooner rather than later will help prevent abrupt across-the-board benefit cuts, allow for targeted adjustments to those who can most afford them, spread the burden of tax and benefit changes across generations, and give today's workers more time to plan for retirement. So obviously, the sooner we act, the better. But if this goes like anything else goes in Washington, we're just going to kick the can down the road to maybe a month before benefits go insolvent, and then we're going to have to make these rapid changes. It's pretty much going to hurt more Americans receiving benefits at that time, and younger generations, our children and grandchildren, are going to be hurt the most the longer we wait. So it's definitely important that we do something by the end of this year, maybe the end of next year. We cannot kick the can down the road. Now, there's actually a pretty cool little calculator on the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget's website here, and we can actually play with the numbers. So we can see this chart up here. It says right now that the Social Security remains insolvent. The trust fund will run out in 2035. Again, this actually got bumped up to 2032 to 2033, possibly 2034. And we can run a couple of different scenarios here. So the first scenario, which is being suggested by a lot of Democrats that we do, is to increase the taxable maximum for what you're earning. So right now, the most you can pay into the Social Security Trust Fund out of the income that you're making is $160,200. So a lot of people are saying that we should scrap the cap and make it so you have to pay also into the trust fund for any income that you make over $400,000 per year. So in this scenario, we're actually going to make it so all income that you earn would be taxable, no cap at all. So in this scenario, if we were to do that, the Social Security Trust Fund would remain insolvent, but it would run out in 2059 as opposed to 2033. So that does push it back another 20 to 25 years if we were to make it so everyone would have to pay into the trust fund and we didn't have that $160,200 cap. And then we have some suggestions by Republicans that we should be raising the full retirement age up to age 69. If we were to do that, it still would run out in the year of 2035. But at that point, there would be just a 18% cut as opposed to a 20% cut. So it does something by doing that, but it really doesn't make as drastic of a change as if we were going to tax everyone and not have that cap on income earnings. Now, we do have a couple of different bills out there that would kind of, help Social Security become solvent for a longer period of time. Perhaps the most popular one and the most effective one that's currently out there is by Bernie Sanders. It's called the Social Security Expansion Act. And his bill would make the Social Security program solvent for another, say, 75 years, close to the 2100 mark. So that would do a lot for the Social Security program. And not only that, but it would actually make benefits more generous. So for everyone receiving Social Security right now, they would actually be receiving a $200 per month increase, or $2,400 over the period of a year. And not only that, for people who are currently receiving the special minimum benefit, well, he would lift that to 25% above the federal poverty line, which would be increased close to around $485 per month. So not only is the Social Security Trust Fund going to remain solvent for a longer period of time under Sanders' bill, but he would also be paying out more generous benefits. Now, he would be doing this by taxing the wealthy people who earn above $250,000 a lot more on their income, and of course also on like their investments and stuff like that. So that's the way they would be able to afford these generous increases. Now, right now, only Democrats are on board with that bill. Republicans are very anti-tax. So in order to get Republicans on board with that bill, I don't know how they would be able to come together, but in order to get anything passed, with a split government with Republicans owning control of the House and Democrats owning control of the Senate, at the end of the day, it is going to have to be something bipartisan. So let's just hope they don't continue to kick the can down the road too far, because as they mentioned there, the sooner we act, if we act today, the fewer cuts that we will have to make. But let me know what your thoughts and comments are below as always. But that's all the news that we have for today's video. I certainly hope that you enjoyed. If you did, again, I would greatly appreciate if you could give this video a like. Consider subscribing to my channel if you have not already. And I will see you in the next video.